Hello and welcome to People Online. This is the first video in a series of presentations on competency based HRM. The topic of today's presentation is the concept of competency. It covers definition of competency and connected terms, types of competencies, developing versus acquiring competencies, and identifying competencies. The target audience for this series of presentations would be three groups. 1. Students of MBHR. 2. Industry practitioners who would like to implement competency-based HRM. And industry practitioners who would like to get the best out of an existing model. Contents. In this presentation, we are going to cover what is competency, types of competencies, what make up competencies, should competencies be developed or acquired, are some competencies easier to identify, key terms associated with competencies, and applications of a competency model. So there would be totally 7 topics. What is competency? According to Boetzius, competency is an underlying characteristic of an individual that is causally related to effective or superior performance in a job. Spencer and Spencer in 1993 came up with a definition which is slightly different. They said a competency is an underlying characteristic of an individual that is causally related to criterion referenced effective and or superior performance in a job or situation. The diagram below shows that competency engineers behavior and behavior in turn leads to consequences or results. Types of competencies. We have generic versus specific competencies. Generic competencies are applicable for a wide range of positions. Specific competencies are specific to a position. So, as we go from one position to another, the specific competency would change, the generic competency may remain the same. Differentiating versus threshold competencies. Differentiating competencies differentiate superior performers from effective or adequate performers. Threshold competencies are the ones that are possessed by both superior and effective performers. These are required for performing a job. So, a threshold competency would not be able to differentiate superior performers from adequate performers. Behavioral versus functional competencies. Behavioral competencies are deeply connected with the behavior of individuals, while functional competencies are connected with technical, functional, or domain expertise. Essentially, these are cognitive in nature. What make up competencies? There are 5 elements. So, one happens to be motives. Motives refer to personal cravings that stir people into action. Example could be need for achievement. Then we have traits. Traits are enduring characteristics that describe an individual's behavior. For example, intelligence. Self-concept. This is a collection of beliefs about oneself. Example could be self-esteem. Knowledge. This refers to information that the incumbent has acquired in certain content areas either through education or through experience. For example, market knowledge for a salesperson. And then we have skill, which is the ability to perform certain physical or mental tasks really well. For example, negotiation skill for a salesperson. Should competencies be developed or acquired? A company had only dogs as its employees. A new business compulsion required trees to be climbed. So, in a meeting, it was discussed and decided that there should be a training program for the dogs to train them on climbing. Do you agree with the decision? Let us see what is waiting for us on the next slide. Then the decision was communicated to the president. The president had recently attended a seminar on competency. He promptly asked, "Should we not be hiring squirrels?" Are some characteristics easier to identify? Well, we saw on a slide some time back that there are 5 elements that make up competency: skill, knowledge, self concept, trait, and motive. Now, this diagram tries to tell us that skill and knowledge are more readily observable, while self concept, trait, and motive are not so readily observable. I think this becomes very clear if we think of a situation where we are interviewing a candidate. Now, we can ask some theoretical questions and test his level of knowledge. We can give her a practical problem to solve and check her skill. But to understand what are her core motives or what are his values, I mean, that's a far more difficult proposition. We would have to use psychometric tests or depth interview techniques. So often, this phenomenon is presented with the help of an analogy. It's basically an iceberg. The blue line that you see in between is the water line. So part of the iceberg is visible, and the larger part is not visible. Key terms associated with competencies. Job competency. This is an underlying characteristic of an employee, that is a motive, trait, it could be skill, it could be aspects of one's self knowledge, social role, or a body of knowledge, which results in effective or superior performance in a job. Organizational core competency is the harmonized combination of multiple resources and skills that distinguish a firm in the marketplace. Competency mapping is the process of identifying job competencies for one or more specified position. Competency assessment is an evaluation to find out how competent the employees are with respect to a chosen set of competencies desirable for a specific position. Competency dictionary would have a number of competencies listed along with their meaning and behavioral indicators. And competency model is usually a narrative description of job competencies for an identifiable group of people. In other words, it's a set of competencies for a job or family of jobs. Applications of a competency model. We can see that there are 5 major areas where we can use a competency model and make things better. So, one is learning and development, then we have recruitment and selection, we have performance management, we have career planning, and we have succession planning. So, what we're trying to say here is that in case a company decides to go in for a competency model, that competency model, to be effective and to make the organization better, would have to be integrated onto the learning and development function. It would have to be integrated onto the recruitment and selection function. It would also have to be integrated with performance management, career planning, and succession planning. Summary. In this presentation, we have covered what is competency, types of competencies, what make up competencies, should competencies be developed or acquired, are some competencies easier to identify, key terms associated with competencies, and applications of a competency model. Thank you for watching. If you found the video to be useful, do like, share, and subscribe. Press the bell icon to stay tuned in for the next in this series of 8 videos. Our next video is competency mapping. Until then, goodbye.